Most Americans think retirement problems start later, after 60, after inflation, after something breaks. But according to Fidelity's latest retirement analysis, the people who feel most secure about retirement in 2026 aren't richer, aren't younger, and aren't financial experts. They're just doing a few quiet things differently, right now. See? While headlines scream about IRS changes, taxes, and 401k uncertainty, data from Vanguard and Charles Schwab shows something interesting. A small group of Americans has already adjusted how they save, where they park money, and when they make moves. Not panic moves, not risky bets. Smart, boring, repeatable decisions. And here's the part most people miss. These strategies don't show up in viral clips, they don't feel dramatic, but over the next 5 to 10 years, they're expected to separate stressed retirees from stable ones. So in this video, I'll walk you through what smart Americans are quietly doing to protect their retirement in 2026, why it's working in today's market, and how these moves actually reduce tax pressure, volatility, and long-term stress without needing more income or timing the market perfectly. If retirement feels closer than you expected, this is the part most people wish they'd learned sooner. Most people think protecting retirement means earning more, or catching the next big market run. But what smart Americans started adjusting, especially going into 2026, has almost nothing to do with chasing returns. It starts with how their money is positioned, not how fast it grows. According to long-term data discussed by Vanguard and Fidelity, one of the biggest retirement mistakes isn't low income. It's having all your money exposed to the same type of risk at the same time. Market risk, tax risk, and timing risk. So quietly, without headlines, smarter households began restructuring their retirement into clear purpose buckets. Not complicated, not fancy, just intentional. Here's what that actually looks like in real life. Instead of viewing retirement as one big pile of money, they separate it by when they'll need it. Money needed in the next few years? That stays stable, less exposed, more predictable. Money meant for later years? That's where growth still matters, but with calmer expectations, not aggressive bets. This shift alone has shown measurable impact. During recent market swings, investors who reduced forced selling, meaning they didn't have to pull money out during downturns, ended up preserving significantly more long-term value. That's not hype, that's math. And here's the part most people don't realize. You don't lose retirement money only when markets crash. You lose it when you're forced to sell at the wrong time, because cash flow wasn't planned. That's why smarter Americans began focusing on liquidity before returns, not stuffing cash under a mattress, but making sure short-term needs don't collide with long-term investments. Another quiet adjustment they're making. They're paying attention to where taxes hit, not just how much they invest. Financial planning data from major custodians shows that retirees with flexible tax positioning, meaning they can choose where income comes from, tend to keep more of what they've already earned. Not by loopholes, by structure. So instead of one tax-sensitive account, they're spreading exposure, creating options, and giving themselves room to adjust when rules change. Because rules always change. And notice something important here. None of this requires predicting the market. None of this depends on political outcomes. None of this assumes perfect timing. It's about control. Control over when money is used. Control over how risk shows up. Control over how taxes impact lifestyle. Not just numbers on a screen. This is why, when you look at the data, the retirees who feel the least stress going forward aren't the ones chasing the highest returns, on not stuffing cash under a mattress, but making sure short-term needs don't collide with long-term investments. Another quiet adjustment they're making. They're paying attention to where taxes hit, not just how much they invest. Financial planning data from major custodians shows that retirees with flexible tax positioning, meaning they can choose where income comes from, tend to keep more of what they've already earned. Not by loopholes, by structure. So instead of one tax-sensitive account, They're spreading exposure, creating options, and giving themselves room to adjust when rules change, because rules always change. And notice something important here. None of this requires predicting the market. None of this depends on political outcomes. None of this assumes perfect timing. It's about control. Control over when money is used. Control over how risk shows up. Control over how taxes impact lifestyle, not just numbers on a screen. This is why when you look at the data, the retirees who feel the least stress going forward aren't the ones chasing the highest returns. They're the ones who adjusted the foundation early, so every future decision becomes easier. And this matters even more now, because as timelines shorten, mistakes cost more. Here's where things get uncomfortable for a lot of people. Because retirement plans don't usually fail on paper. They fail in real moments. Moments when markets drop, when headlines get loud, when friends start talking, when fear shows up quietly, and decisions get rushed. Market behavior data tracked by firms like Dalbar and Vanguard has shown this for years. The average investor consistently underperforms the market, not because of bad investments, but because of when they react. Buy after things feel safe. Sell when things feel scary. So smart Americans started changing something subtle but powerful. They stopped reacting in real time. Instead of watching the market daily, they began operating on pre-decided rules. Rules made when emotions were calm. For example, when money would be moved, how much could be withdrawn, and what wouldn't be touched during volatility. This removes panic from the equation. Because here's the truth most people never hear. Discipline beats intelligence in retirement planning. Every time. Another quiet shift that's showing up in real data. They're slowing down how income begins. Instead of flipping the retirement switch all at once, they phase into income gradually. Studies referenced by major retirement platforms show that delaying or smoothing withdrawals, even slightly, has a disproportionate impact on long-term sustainability. Not dramatic, but meaningful. It reduces sequence of returns risk, which is just a technical way of saying you're less likely to drain your savings early just because the market had bad timing. And notice something important here. This isn't about being ultra-conservative. It's about being strategic under pressure. Smart Americans also changed how they consume financial information. They stopped chasing daily news and started focusing on signals, not noise. Long-term trends, policy direction, spending patterns, not viral predictions, because constant exposure to short-term fear trains people to make short-term decisions, and retirement punishes that behavior harshly. So instead, they narrowed their inputs. Fewer voices, clearer framework, less emotional whiplash. And this is where things really start to compound. When behavior stabilizes, everything else improves. You stay invested when it matters. You don't lock in losses unnecessarily. You let time do its job, which is something markets still reward, even in uncertain environments. This is why, according to multiple retirement confidence surveys, people with written income plans and behavior rules report significantly lower stress, even when their account balances aren't dramatically higher. Because stability isn't just numbers, it's predictability.